Testing, 1, 2, 3. Well, yeah. Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for coming. I know those of you who work for me, you didn't have any choice. I made you come, but it makes the crowd look bigger. So thank you very much, and good afternoon. And this is fun to be back in person. Just last night, there were several of us in the room that were able to celebrate some of our new donors to WSU that really hit new philanthropic levels, and we were in Seattle. And so there's a whole lot of people driving over the pass and flying this direction this morning, and it's great to see everybody here. One of the things that came up over the last couple days when we had these foundation meetings was we heard it again and again. People were so glad to be back in person and seeing everybody and trying to recognize colleagues and people we met once or twice that now didn't have a mask on. And it really just reminds us it's fun to be around people, and some of the networking that all of us worked to do during COVID on your computer, just not the same as being able to stop and spend 5 minutes talking to somebody in person, face to face. So thank you for being out. Thank you for supporting CougsFirst, and thank you to the CougsFirst organizers for once again getting Cougs together, sharing, getting us to looking at other businesses and other opportunities for us to work back and forth. So had a great morning this morning, sort of got up, we had some meetings and stuff like that, went to the airport, I'm going through, and the guy looks at my shirt and he goes, "If you just had the other W on there, I would have let you through." I said, "Remember that Apple Cup?" So, all right, next slide, please. So let's talk at first. I want to hit on a series of different things today about WSU. This is going to be a little shorter than in previous years. And then what I want to do is be able to take some time to answer the questions and stuff that you all may have, things that you'd like to talk about, things that you're just curious about. So one of the things that we've worked to do over the pandemic time is attract some new leaders to WSU. And so if I could have the next slide, our first person that I'd like to introduce virtually is Elizabeth Chilton, who we hired as our provost and executive vice president nearly 2 years ago. As a matter of fact, we were doing negotiations and things in the month of April. Elizabeth and her husband Michael, who is a professor in associate professor in anthropology, both moved together to Pullman, never having visited the place. So they accepted jobs, all online. They took my sales job, obviously, that they needed to come. And so now she's finishing that first 2 years of serving as our provost and executive vice president. That wasn't a big enough job. So what we did in January was add responsibilities as our first ever Pullman chancellor. And so as we talk about one WSU and the WSU system, one of the things that's really important is that each of our 6 campuses is now represented by a chancellor, and that chancellor then has a staff that is focused around vision, direction, and things like that for that particular campus. They're supported by our academic deans that are here in different colleges that also have system responsibilities and program responsibilities across the state. So nobody else is structured quite like we are in the United States, and that's okay. And I want to talk about that a little bit later on because I think that's an important principle moving forward. So I know many of you have met Elizabeth. If you haven't, you'll have a chance in the future, but really pleased to have her starting to help shape where WSU Pullman is going to be going in the future in terms of strategic planning and her vision as one of our primary leaders. So next slide, please. Well, we just announced just a couple days ago that we've filled our Connors Dean position with Wendy Powers. Wendy comes to us from the University of California system. She's got a lot of experience working at land-grant institutions throughout her career. She was the top candidate on paper after interviewing, did a great job. And these Connors Deans, and if I can't remember exactly what Connors stands for, I'll screw it up, but it's agricultural, natural resource sciences, and human sciences all rolled together in one college. But it's a very complex job because there's so many aspects of it. It's not just the academic part of faculty, staff, and students on the Pullman campus. It's supervising extension across every single county. It's also making sure that that person is representing Washington State University and Washington agriculture in a lot of places in the state, a very prominent job. So right now, WSU has a female dean of engineering, female dean of honors, female dean of veterinary medicine, and I'm not sure if there are many other places around the country. Those are very difficult deanships to fill with fantastic leaders, and we're just so pleased to continue to diversify our deans, our chancellors, and our vice presidents. So Wendy's going to start in August, and I look forward to maybe next year at the CougsFirst events, having her here, letting her meet people and things like that. So, but once again, it shows that people want to be part of Washington State University. And when you do a national search, you come down, you winnow it down, you got your top candidate, you make an offer, and they almost immediately say yes. That says that we're representing ourselves well. People like what they see in our state. They like the leadership team. They like the opportunities to advance their career, and I'm really pleased that we're part of that. So, next slide, please. Well, the pandemic certainly affected us like it affected all of you in many, many different ways. And I think if we really think about our students, our faculty and staff, and let's put them in these different categories, you know, for our students, many of them found it very challenging. Please come in and sit down. We got plenty of room here. If you do sit down, you can't get up and leave early. That's the one problem. But yeah, we got plenty of places to sit. So, yeah, thank you. I'm disappointed you didn't bring like a drink with you, but anyway, one of the challenges that we find so many of our students had is it was stressful being at home or wherever they were going through the online educational experience. Then if they weren't at home and they were back on one of our campuses in some sort of residential housing, sometimes a lot of people in a pretty small space all trying to use the computer and do stuff at the same time. And then we certainly, prior to the pandemic, were concerned about our students' mental health across all of our campuses, and this is throughout higher education. The pandemic certainly did nothing to improve that situation, and so that was one of the challenges that we had with our students. The second thing is with faculty and staff, higher ed is known to be, kind of glacial in how fast we can change. Everybody's like, oh, well, look at what we do today, look at what we did before. Think about this. When the pandemic first hit, we went from fully in-person instruction at 5 of our campus locations within 2 weeks to all online. And our faculty went to a ton of different types of instructional places so that they would be effective in what they did and worked really, really hard to make sure our students had the best experience that they could. But I think what we learned from that is that flexibility is really important. But so many of our faculty had at home, trying to do their class prep, trying to maybe shift to a completely different venue. You have elder care. You have children maybe at home that are also trying to do the same kind of thing. A limited space, not great bandwidth. And so our faculty and staff also were dealing with quite a few things. And I know many of you in your different businesses saw the same types of things. So as we come out of the pandemic, I think it's great to think that we would just snap back. But the reality is it's going to be a gradual return to what our new normal is going to be. And anybody who claims they know exactly what that is, I'm not sure I have a comfortable feeling of where we're going to be in 6 months. There's some characteristics that I think are going to be there. Flexibility in the workplace. We found that people can work from a lot of different places around the country, geographically, at home, evenings, things like that. I think people reassess workplace boundaries a lot more, and I think that's something that I want to make sure that we put some barriers in place as much as possible moving ahead to give people that space that they need to make sure that they're refreshed. So when we look at the pandemic presented many challenges, we also had a lot of WSU folks step up in really major ways. So next slide. A couple things. If you just think this community here, our nursing students, pharmacy students stepped up to assist with vaccinations and things like that when we didn't have enough healthcare workers to be able to do that. a lot of our faculty pivoted and started working on COVID-related things. Now, we would think sometimes our science faculty do that, but we also had faculty in the social sciences and humanities and other fields that also started to look at impacts on COVID on many different aspects of our lives, our communities, things that we do. And not every faculty member did this, but an awful lot saw this as an opportunity to shift their research program or do an add onto some things that they were already doing. During this time, we also landed the largest research grant in WSU history, $125 million from USAID. It's the largest we've ever gotten. And kind of in the whole sweep of things, that sometimes tend to be the kind of thing that, something else happened that week, probably around football, and we just forgot about the fact that we won this big grant. So our faculty during this time have continued to excel, to push that envelope, and we're going to see, I think, maybe a record-setting number in terms of research productivity even during COVID times, which is just an amazing achievement. So these innovative solutions, and I want to spend a little time here talking about Washington State University and what I think is important to us. This last week, those of us in higher education saw a really startling announcement. Iowa State University elected to no longer be part of the AAU. And that's a kind of inside baseball thing. You go, well, who cares? Well, the AAU is seen as the top kind of thing you aspire to as an institution. Kind of means you made it into the big club. It's public and private universities in North America. We got plenty of seats. Come on in. We got plenty of room for you. And Iowa State elected to no longer be a member of that. And I reached out to a colleague of mine that works there. And really what happened was this. Where AAU going, where Iowa State were going, were very different places. Iowa State said, we're not going to let somebody else dictate to us what's important to us as an institution. So how does that apply to Washington State? To me, we're Washington's land-grant university. That carries with it an obligation, I think, for us to work with businesses, with industry, with communities in the state of Washington to help advance. It means for Washington residents, we should have the opportunity to go one of our campuses and be able to get that undergraduate, that graduate degree program, do those kind of things. It doesn't mean that we don't want to have a national or international impact, but at the end of the day, one of your core principles has got to be we're taking care and we're making a difference in our state. So maybe that means that we don't rise up in the U.S. News and World Report rankings like somebody would like to see us do, or that we're not in a particular group. But at the end of the day, I want to sit down with families in Washington, businesses in Washington, elected officials in Washington, and say, we are here to make a difference. Let us know how we can help you. And I think that's going to differentiate us from those purple people in the state and other universities as well. But the message is not really about UW or anybody else. Is let's pick our pathway. Let's follow that pathway, and let's be really, really good at it. I think we have a history of doing that through 130 years. We shouldn't change that. But now is the time to double back down, make that part of our DNA, and make sure everything we're doing to ask ourselves that question. So next slide, please. So I've talked about the land-grant mission. I talked about what our faculty and staff are doing. I think this is going to be a unique time in the next 4 to 5 years for WSU to take some of the work we're doing on the system job and make sure that we're allowing each of our campuses to really work with their own individual communities. For a long time, our model was fine. Pullman kind of knew what was best. It was the flagship campus, and all decisions went through Pullman. If we look at where we are today, though, in this particular community, we have a lot of folks in the community go to Daryl DeWalt, our Vice President for Health Science and Chancellor of the Spokane campus. They're saying, hey, we want to see this here. That happens in Tri-Cities and Vancouver and those other places. And sometimes we had a habit of going, well, Pullman doesn't think that's what you need in Vancouver. And you say, well, guess what? You're a little ways apart from there. Maybe we need to allow each of our campuses to have a little more autonomy on what they're doing in their communities. So I think it's going to be an exciting time for us. If you say, Kirk, what does exactly this look like? How's it all going to map out? We don't always know. And I think when you lead and you initiate and work with a set of colleagues on change, you think you kind of see where you're going to go. You're going to get some parts of that right, but there's some parts that are a little foggy and you're not sure. And I think we got to be comfortable with the fact that as we progress down the road, we're going to get most of it right. but we're going to have some things that we don't do quite right. And we always need to be willing to say, you know what, we didn't do this right. Let's back up a little bit and stick with our core principles. Next slide. So many of you saw this last week. We had a record-setting $20 million gift from Ed and Bea Schweitzer and Schweitzer Engineering Labs. Yes, that is... This has been a long time coming, and there's been a relationship with SEL and with Ed and Bea over many, many years. And interestingly, when we moved to the state, Noel's here, she had a long-term relationship. Actually, SEL helped do some stuff in her lab 3 universities ago. So when we were interviewing and stuff like that, you know, SEL said, well, we'd like to have Noel come to the community. I hope we can find something for Kirk to do. So, but this long-term relationship with SEL, sometimes we see a major gift that comes out of a person, an individual, a company, and you sort of think there was just some magic moment. To me, yes, there is a magic moment when somebody says, yes, they want to make an investment like this, but it's a long-term partnership, and I think it's a relationship building. That's what we are here about at CougsFirst, building relationships, doing that back and forth. But we also work, and Phil Weiler's here, he's our Vice President for Marketing and Communications, and what we did is, those of you who might look at the Seattle Times, we had a full-page advertisement in there, we had a lot of electronic push-out on social media channels. You want to take something like this, and you want to make sure that we really shout it from the rooftops, and everybody in the state realizes that there are Cougs making a difference, and we're going to have the same quality faculty they're going to have anywhere else. They'll be better. We're going to have the same wonderful facilities that other people have across the state, and then we're seeing the same level of investment, and I think this is really important. So that's great. We also, one of the negative challenges we had during COVID was around enrollment, and you all have seen that we're down across all of our campuses with the exception, as Dave Soleil likes to point out, of the global campus, which was up a little bit. And one of the things that we're finding is we watch the economy, if you will, at least tax revenues in the state, was kind of a V-shaped recovery. It went down and then went up really quickly. We're not going to see the same thing with enrollment. What we believe is this fall, in most of our campuses, we will certainly see our first-year freshman enrollment will be stable or up a little bit. But our colleagues in the community and technical colleges, or some of those, are seeing 20% decreases in enrollment. And guess what? That's also where WSU gets a lot of students from at all of our campus locations. So we're probably going to see a stable enrollment for this particular fall. We think a year or two from now we'll be back up to where we were pre-pandemic. So we had, on the Pullman campus, we had 1,200 families this last weekend that were all there visiting, looking at it. And all of our campuses, Pullman, Vancouver, Tri-Cities, Spokane, Everett, they sell themselves when families come and get a chance to meet faculty, meet staff, walk through the buildings, get a sense of place. And it's not that the web pages don't do that, but boy, it's not the same as being there in person. So we're seeing large numbers of folks show up on all of our campuses, and we're trying to be innovative. In Vancouver, one of the things we're pioneering is at a college fair, you come in, you give your set of credentials, we'll do on-the-spot admission. So you don't have to go, well, we'll get back to you in 3 weeks. I mean, how does that feel? You come up, say, here's what I'm doing, here's my high school or community college credentials. We say, you're admitted, done. And we want to make sure that we're doing those types of things across the state of Washington to give ourselves a little bit of an edge as we look out at what enrollment needs to look like. So don't expect to see, that V-shaped recovery and all those kind of things. We want to make sure that we're doing this right. And my goal is every student we admit on any of our campuses, our goal has got to be that they graduate and that we put in place the resources available so that they can be successful. And if we could you say, well, Kirk, I know a whole bunch of students you could admit and all of a sudden the numbers would look good. If we don't think we have the resources in place for those students to be successful, we are not doing them a favor by admitting when you say we don't have the wraparound programs or the types of things they need to be successful as a Coug. So let's do it slowly, let's do it right, and let's make sure that we're really looking out for Washington families. So next slide. Well, I've got to finish up with some athletics here. Second straight NCAA bid for our women's basketball program this year. Yes, thank you. And, what I think is really cool about this, unfortunately, is I can remember extremely well the year that they got the first bid, not this team. We did. That was the year I got my PhD. So think about that, a 30-year gap between NCAA bids, 2 years in a row. I see Jen is here. Once again, our volleyball team continues each year to go to the NCAA tournaments. We've just got this real momentum around some of our sports. So, yeah. Next slide. Oh, I have another one. Lo and behold, around the Apple Cup. And this one's my favorite because the governor's wearing his University of Washington hat, applauding us having the Apple Cup. But this was fun, not just for Cougs who've been around a while and beating the Huskies, but just what a year we had in football where you had a change in coach in the middle of the year. We had Coach Dickert step into a situation that I've told several people was extremely challenging, right? You get a call, you think I've been waiting for this, and then you're going to go into a locker room that could be completely split, and there was no guarantee that our players are going to be ready to play that next particular Saturday. And if I look at the way he handled that and brought that group together, it's really an amazing journey, and I just look forward to many more of these types of things. But what Jen does, what all of our head coaches do, I believe, is they do it the right way. It's great to win games and contests, but we graduate our students. We make sure that we're recruiting really high-quality young men and women to be part of the Cougar Athletic Program. And I think one thing I love about our fans is we all want to win, but we don't want to win at the cost of doing things the wrong way. And I've been places, I know colleagues of mine who are presidents at other places, they can't say that same thing. And so I want to make sure that we continue to do it in a way that all of us take pride in. That front porch of the university is important for all of us, and it's fun to be a part of that. Largely, I stay away, text our coaches. That's my job. Meet with recruits occasionally. Noel and I do have an opportunity at times to meet prospective recruits. Every time I meet one of them, I'll say, you should not go anywhere where you don't meet the president. We got to get every edge possible. Every edge possible. Next slide. So let's look ahead to our future. I'm a glass half full kind of person. And if I look at our future, we've got a great, stable leadership team. We are graduating our second class from the College of Medicine coming up really this next week. We are working to develop residency programs so that we can take those Coug MDs and give them opportunities in the state of Washington to make sure that they're doing residencies here. This is not a trivial thing. There's not just a little formula that you look up and say, just do these 5 steps. Every situation's different. It's a lot of partnerships, a lot of time. I think we're going to see enrollment growth. I think we're going to hit $400 million in research expenditures for Washington State University. And here's one last point of pride on this that I think is important. If you look at a per faculty member basis, our research productivity at Washington State is just as high as Texas A&M and Purdue. Those are bigger institutions, but it says we have the same quality of individual working on all of our campuses. So our future's bright. I look forward to leading us well into the future. I'm not going to the NCAA. I'm not going to the Big 12. And oh my God, that's been quite the week there. But I'd be happy to answer any questions that any of you have. And thank you all for being here. Look forward, if I don't have a lot of questions, just seeing everybody here at CougsFirst. So go Cougs. Thank you. Any questions?
Surely someone has a question.
Yeah, no.
Can you talk a little bit about how your job is changing as the system president versus what you've done in the past?
Yeah, I've had to go from 20 hours a week to 30. I mean, it is really tough. So Noel asked how the job is changing, and largely as a system president, what it means is I no longer have responsibilities for a particular campus. And so, for example, it snowed like January 2nd. We were driving somewhere, and Noel goes, what are we going to do about, classes? I go, not my problem. And so I think it means that I'll be able to be out on the road more. I'll be in our communities more. I'll be on our campuses more. And if I look over the last 5 months, actually, I've been able to be out in Vancouver and Tri-Cities and some of the other places here in Spokane a lot more than I was able to do in the first 5.5 years I was here. So I think that part has been a little liberating. It also means I'm on the road a lot, but I'm meeting Cougs who want to invest in Washington State University, want to partner with us. And my job isn't to have a whole set of things that I want to do. I want to take what Mark wants to do with the School of Pharmacy and Pharmaceutical Sciences, what Bruce wants to do with the Murrow School. My job is to help advance those particular things with our donors. And so that means I got to be able to work together well with our deans and chancellors on those development opportunities. So thank you. Great question. Yeah. Yes, sir.
So CougsFirst is a dream that's coming true. So how do you see CougsFirst working with Washington State University in the future?
Yeah, so we actually have a formal contract with CougsFirst, and to me, this is if we want to find ways to bring people together that are interested in the business community, maybe want to do things with other Coug-owned businesses or things like that, develop partnerships in our two major metropolitan areas, the greater Seattle area, the greater Spokane area. This, to me, represents our opportunity to do that. Then we couple that with a bunch of other academic programs. The Power Breakfast this morning, I know Chip's out here in the College of Business does a lot of things with this. It's our students' opportunity to come around and also, kind of their business cards. They're ready to network. They're ready to talk to folks. And I remember pre-pandemic, we had a young man that walked up to me. Maybe I was talking to Jack or it was somebody and said, "Oh, by the way, I was here a year ago and I got a job. And I got a job from this event because I met somebody and we connected and did that." So to me, Daryl, it's that networking opportunity to bring the business community, alumni, university, and campus leadership kind of all together in one event. So plus it's fun too. You can walk around with a drink and that's always good. So yeah, thank you. Anything else? Yes, sir.
IPF, I think I saw you mentioned that with rising construction costs and so forth, things are a little on hold. Any anticipation when the balloon comes down and sea shovels in the ground?
Yeah, so the question was on the indoor practice facility, and also we have the Champions Complex, and the two projects are going, even though they're different, we want to kind of do them both together at the same time. And those of you not familiar, the indoor practice facility will go where the bubble affectionately is, and be much larger, be able to allow multiple sports to use that. We've actually received a naming gift for that. Many of you have sort of seen all of those types of things. We expect to bring it before the Regents for approval in September. And we've done most of the fundraising to date. And what we have to do now is do the real construction plans and start doing some of that process. Shovel in the ground probably would be summer of 23. So that's when we anticipate moving forward. So Pat and his team done a great job with this. And we've raised the total amount of dollars in pledges that we need to, but we have to have a certain amount of cash in hand prior to starting it. And got about 40% of the cash in hand. We have 40% of the total project cost cash in hand. We need to have 50%. So we're just talking to a lot of folks who made investments in those facilities and asked them if they'd be willing to accelerate those pledges, and that's occurring. So I think you'll see that happening sooner rather than later. So, yes.
President Schulz, could you talk a little bit more about the role that you see the health sciences campus here in Spokane playing in this community in the Inland Northwest?
So, Alex, I can certainly answer that question. These are all, I've been texting people, please ask a question. So, thank you, Alex. Our health sciences have been part of WSU for an awfully long time, and sometimes people tend to think because of all the publicity around the medical school that it's all sometimes relatively new. We've had nursing for decades, we've had pharmacy for decades, just not located necessarily always here in Spokane. To me, the power has been pulling pharmacy, nursing, medicine together in one contiguous kind of location where we can see greater partnerships going back and forth. And That's the reason I appointed Daryl as our first ever vice president for health sciences, was how do we pull these colleges, these units together, get more things going back and forth. I think the exciting thing now, Alex, is now that we've gotten the medical school up operational, fully funded by the legislature for 80 students a year, now it's what's that next step? What is the next big thing 10 years out? So I think that's a couple things. I mentioned residencies. That's going to be important. I think, though, the partnerships with the healthcare systems that are rapidly consolidating across the country are going to be really important for us to do that. And we can be like Switzerland. We can be a partner with all kinds of different health systems that may actually compete in the marketplace. But guess what? We can be there for research, for talent, for our faculty expertise, and all those types of things. Then I think we want to add some additional programs, and the public and community health is one area that we're looking at, social work, things like that. And it's easy to go, well, University X has it, Eastern has it, or Gonzaga has it, or whatever. Folks, we need so many people in the healthcare space. There is plenty of opportunities for students. The other challenge that we're going to have is the clinical rotations that each of those particular areas has to have, and a lot of our colleagues, not just in Spokane but in the state, are stressed out over how they get those clinical rotations there, and that's going to be another challenge for us. Then I want us to brand ourselves, Daryl, this is all Daryl's stuff, but as WSU Health, so that we see whether it's veterinary medicine, doing some creative stuff in Pullman, something on one of our other campuses. WSU Health can be the branding part that we use, so no matter where somebody is in the state, they walk in somewhere, they see WSU Health there, they know that's all kind of part of the complex that's headquartered in Spokane, but has statewide reach and statewide impact. So the next step, I think, is going to be a big one. These are not trivial things to do, but on the other hand, this community here has banded around big ideas and helped make them happen, and I think they can do the same for this. So it's going to be a fun ride. Yes, sir.
My question's about name, image, likeness for sports.
Yeah.
And how that's impacted WSU and kind of what we're doing going forward for NIL stuff.
Yeah, so
That's a big, broad, but I just kind of want
Yeah,
to hear your
yeah.
thoughts where you're at.
So name, image, and likeness, I was just talking to an athletic director on the East Coast about a week ago. I won't use the language he did. I'll keep it kind of, family friendly. But what we started with is that was going to be an opportunity for our student athletes to, use their name, image, and likeness to get endorsement deals and things like that. And I think you felt it was going to provide some additional resources and give them those opportunities. Well, look where it's morphed to. We've got certain schools out there that are just saying we got millions of dollars to spend on NIL deals if you'll come sign with us. I think what I'm concerned about, what Pat's concerned about, I won't ask Jen. I mean, I'm sure she can tell you. But any of our head coaches is, sort of where does this go? How do we keep up? Do we want to keep up? I think at some particular point, just because you can do something, do you feel you need to do it? So I think we're going to have to find some more resources at Washington State University to make sure that our head coaches and our student athletes have at least some of the same things that they can get at other places, and that we're not starting so far behind. But on the other hand, do we want to be out there just waving money around to buy players to come to an institution? I'm just saying this philosophically. So I think, generally speaking, people in the athletics administration world, and I'll put presidents and chancellors in that category, feel there's going to have to be some boundaries set up at some particular point. That's probably going to have to be federal legislation. I don't think it can be done state by state by state. And right now, it's very difficult to get anything through Congress because of just the general style of governance in D.C. And I'm not being critical of it. That's just a reality. So I think the key over the next couple of years is I think it's going to get worse before it gets better. I don't think everybody's going to like what they see, and I mean just fans and university administrators, head coaches, and so on. And then I think there are going to be some boundaries put up that may at least put a little sanity back into the system. So when Coach Nick Saban at Alabama is worried that he's not going to be competitive for players because of the Texas schools, I mean, that should give you some indication of just how wacky, this has sort of gotten. So it is what it is, and everybody's got their own opinion. And I think the bottom line, though, it's up to me and Pat and others to make sure Jen and our other head coaches have what they need to be successful in the Pac-12. So, yeah. Yes, sir. Mark.
The legislature approved the cybersecurity this year. What can you share at this early point about what that means for WSU and the state?
Sure. So we went to the legislature, and the governor had asked WSU to submit a proposal for how we can increase cybersecurity training, degree programs across multiple campus locations. So we went to the legislature with a proposal to add a business track and an engineering track in Pullman, the Tri-Cities, and in Everett. And the legislature didn't approve all of it. What they did approve was the engineering track at those 3 locations. But it means we're going to hire faculty, we'll have scholarships, we'll be able to really do something. And these are extremely high demand graduates coming out of those particular areas. So anytime we can get resources that allow us to add to our faculty pool, people just bring all kinds of different things. And I think maybe the program in Everett looks slightly different than the one in Pullman does, which looks a little different than the one in the Tri-Cities. And so we're going to have an opportunity to partner with industry a lot, I think, on these particular programs. So we were fortunate to get some resources from the legislature for this particular program. We also got a joint UW-WSU pharmacy residency program for 2 residents for 1 year for this side of the state and for UW to have. And I think if that goes well, and I suspect it will, I know Mark and his team will do a great job with that, what's going to happen is I suspect we'll go back in the future and we'll try and make that bigger. But think of where we were 6 years ago in a cage death match with the University of Washington over the medical school. This last legislative session, we actually took a joint healthcare thing between the 2 schools and got it funded. So I think it's really good for the state of Washington. So thank you. Yes. Hey.
Could you speak to how the recent years have impacted WSU's relationship with students from the Pacific Rim with, in light of COVID? And I remember a couple years ago, you entered into an agreement with a recruitment entity from China. Just how's that sort of evolved? How we with the student numbers? How's that impact the revenue?
Yeah, so our student numbers, especially abroad, are down. And not even a particular area. People just, one had trouble getting visas, trouble getting to the United States. We've seen a really nice recovery for that. But I think our current geopolitical stance against China, we're certainly seeing fewer numbers of Chinese students. One of the good things WSU has done way before I was president during my tenure is still the majority of our students are from the state of Washington. The next big group is from California, Northern California. And so what winds up happening is the impacts on us are a little bit more modest than they were on some other institutions that have much larger groups. But to me, part of an undergraduate experience is sitting in a classroom with people from all over the world. And if I can't travel somewhere, that's a way that I can, start to develop a little bit of a different perspective. So I think it's really important that we recover some of those relationships. And so I think it's pretty flat on where it was. It's up a little bit from where we were in the lowest point in the pandemic. But where we are going to be with China, I think that's really difficult to see.
Would you have a number of percent drop off?
I think we had about 10% international students. I hope somebody out there is not recording this. And I think it came down to we were just 1 or 2% there for part of that time. It almost shut the door completely because people couldn't get out of their countries. They couldn't get flights. I mean, it was that difficult. So, yeah, thank you. Anybody else? Well, folks. Oh, yes, sir. Oh, we got 2. One there and one there.
This is not a scripted question.
None of these are scripted questions,
Yeah,
trust me, yeah.
Wait, let me take notes here.
No, that's all right, Mike. So with the connection to industry and thinking about that, we're graduating students that have good jobs, basically. It's our number one role, right, as educators, right? And 96% of undergraduates don't go on to get their PhD and do lab work and do patents for the university and all that stuff. The 96% actually go out and actually get jobs. So the evolution of what a technical job is, since I'm a technical teacher under engineering, the role of technical graduates is really changing, has changed in the last 10 years, and I've seen it myself. And now they have to be truly multidisciplinary to be successful in business. I quote a recruiter from Starbucks who says, we don't need another CAD jockey. That's what she said. We need someone to be leaders who can be flexible, can do multiple types of engineering as well as business. I personally teach the business of engineering, and as such, I see this as a real need, truly from a truly interdisciplinary perspective. And my observation as a new professor is that the current arrangement in the colleges is geared toward creating more single-disciplinary type of graduates as opposed to multidisciplinary. You can't get a degree, it's really hard to get a degree that covers both like business and engineering and communications and economics. It's really, really hard for financial and the way it's structured. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, it's interesting you mentioned that. Noel and I have been involved in engineering education for 30 years, and if you go back 30 years, we had a lot of industry folks that said the same thing 30 years ago. My engineering degree had almost, compared to what students do today, let's see, it's 120 some, I was at 145 was required. And we've cut that much out of the curriculum over the last 30 years to help people develop these additional set of skills. And I don't want to call them soft skills because that kind of implies you don't need them. I think they're necessary skills to work in a technical workplace. To me, it's internships, doing group work that's really interdisciplinary group work, so that some of our project teams that do these different kind of engineering projects, they've got people from multiple disciplines in there, and they find out at the end of the day, you all got to roll up your sleeves, got to get something that works, that's got a budget and all those things. And I think those are the experiences that we need to keep adding and giving our students so that they see those interdisciplinary things. The question is, let's just take mechanical engineering. You look at that curriculum and you say, okay, let's add in some business and all this. And you say, what are we going to take out? Well, we probably need this fundamental, we need this one. And I think the problem is we've trimmed down the curricula in terms of coursework about as lean as you can get it and still have a core set of technical skills. This is just Kirk's opinion now. I think, though, it's those other experiences that are going to add to that. And eventually some of the folks will go back, get business degrees, MBAs, other types of things to kind of fill that in depending on their track that they go. Our son is finishing up his graduate degree at Georgia Tech and this summer. And, people say, well, what's his degree in? Well, it's mechanical engineering, but he took just as much math and biology as he did engineering. And his thesis is really 3 disciplines molded together. I see a lot of our young scholars coming out all over WSU with the same kinds of things. They are not super disciplinary. They've got something on their diploma, but they've got expertise in a wide range of fields. So I think this next generation wants that broad range of experiences, but I worry a little bit on technical fields at the undergraduate level. If we trim too much more, I think we produce a jack of all trades and master of none. Maybe that's what we need to do, but that's my concern.
But systemically, do we promote that kind of interdisciplinary?
We certainly don't do it as much as we can, but part of the challenge is to do that requires people, money, resources, and I think right now we're like a lot of organizations, we're running pretty lean. And now growing forward, as we have people like yourself with your background and other colleagues like that, they're going to push to say, let's do some things a little bit differently. And that's just higher ed. And I think that's healthy for us. So anyway, I probably talked long enough without giving a specific answer. That's all. I learned that at President's School. So anyway, thank you. Well, what? Oh, yeah. Okay. Sorry. Yeah. A little, marital communication here, 35 years. We still don't have it down yet. So anyway, folks, thank you for being here. We'll be around. There are lots of folks here. Let's come and have a great time and go Cougs. Thank you.